We got Paolo with us. Good morning, Paolo.
Awesome. Well, we're just a few minutes after 10. Jim, you want to get us started?
That would be great. All right, let's start the.
Got some people filing in. Yeah, no, welcome. This is an exciting topic. With Jim lending his expertise here on this topic. I'm Ryan Poole. I'm the founder of Real Trade. If you haven't heard about us, we're an online marketplace and social media platform for real estate. We have thousands of buyers and sellers in there, and agents as well. I recommend checking it out because the nice thing for agents, they get free leads, and we add value here to the real estate community. One of my favorite things to do is host this webinar with Jim, where we're all, one of Jim's favorite sayings, iron sharpens iron here, and we learn from, the community and help make us agents better. And this topic, particularly, Jim, I'm working through with clients right now on portability. So I'm really excited about it because this is something that can really save your clients money. True dollars, makes you look like a hero, and obviously if you save them money and give them some great expertise, they're more to use you in the future. So yeah, so let's go ahead, Jim.
I'm just going to elaborate on something Ellen said earlier. It's like you walk into these meetings and you have some general knowledge on a topic and you drop that knowledge on your buyer or your seller and you look like a rock star, but the reality is typically there's a lot more, and this happens to me all the time. There's a lot more to the topic than what I'm telling them about.
You get it?
I get the benefit of getting a lot of calls from realtors. They tell me what their issues are, and then I can fall back and make some great outlines, and we can have some great discussions.
Get off the sound.
I'm going to mute you out, Pam, and then everybody gets the benefit of, because the reality is whatever pain one of us is having, we're all having. We're all in the same boat together. So if we can learn from each other, that's the great opportunity here. We're going to get you out in about 30 or 40 minutes. If you turn on your camera, it helps me get feedback from you guys, and I can move on or I can drill down deeper. There's going to be a question and answer session at the end. Ryan and I are going to drop some time-saving tools on you at the end that'll make you guys more efficient. When I started doing this topic, I was talking to realtors and I realized how many misconceptions there are about Homestead in general. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about portability today, and then next time we meet or one of the future events we meet, we're going to talk about Homestead specifically. Today is specifically Homestead. I'll give you a brief Homestead outline. I'm sorry, today is portability specific. I'll give you a brief Homestead outline, but then we'll drill down deeper about Homestead because in talking to agents, it's clear that there are a lot of misconceptions. If there is something you'd like to talk about in the future, please text me or put it in the chat box and we'll get to it in the future. And then again, we'll have a question and answer period. Ryan, do you want to say a few things before we jump into it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm excited here to, get this information, share it with my clients, and yeah, as far as, I'm dealing with clients right now on this. So let's dig deep into it, Jim. Let's get going.
All right. So I prepared an outline. If you want to watch the chat box, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll watch the chat box. If you guys have any questions as we go through, so you don't forget them, write them in the chat, and we'll definitely get to them and get them answered.
All right. Can you see that, Ryan?
Yep. Looks great.
All right. So this is my outline. I'm going to share it with you guys. There's no need to take notes. Again, we're going to talk about Homestead in general today, and then we're going to talk about portability today because there are a lot of misconceptions about portability, but then there are a bunch of basics on Homestead we'll go over in the future. So the goal is to be the most prepared agent when you walk into a listing. Check out the portability before you walk into the listing appointment. Go to your property appraiser's webpage. Before you walk into a listing appointment, you always want to understand what's going on with title. And then there's any tax advantages that you can give to your seller. So when you walk in, you're going to have that stuff on the top of your list of topics, and they're just going to believe you're the most prepared person. You're going to get the listing. There are 3 benefits to Homestead. Everybody knows the $50,000 deduction from value, but there are 3 benefits. There's protection from judgment creditors. There's the $50,000 deduction from value, and there's the 3% cap on the increase in value under the Save Our Homes constitutional amendment. This is where portability comes from. And the cap can actually be less than 3% if the CPI is less than 3%. We'll drill down on that shortly. But the important thing to remember here is there's 3 homestead benefits. Everybody knows the one, but there are 3, and we'll go into it in a future show. But everybody remembers when OJ, not everybody. If you're old enough, you remember when OJ Simpson moved to Florida, and he moved to Florida for a reason, and that was to get the protections that at that time were pretty unique in this country for homestead. What do you need to qualify for homestead?
Ownership.
You need to live there you need to live in the property on January 1st. It has to be your primary residence, and you got to apply before March 31st. Homestead is a specific application. Many people get it by default, but the reality is you're supposed to, you need to apply for it, but the property appraiser frequently does keep track of it on their own. But if they don't, a lot of times your clients, and we hear it, even if we tell our buyers to apply for homestead and they fail to do it, we have one right now, and they missed out on a big tax benefit. What defines primary residence? So you have to live there. It has to be your primary. You got to apply before March 31st. But what defines your primary? It's the residence that you are at with the intent to permanently live there. Does that mean you have to be there the majority of the year, 6 months in a day, or some, all kinds of rules that realtors believe are in existence and homeowners? No. It's that you reside there with the intent to permanently live there. We'll drill down on what that means later, but what is residing there? It's evidenced by your Florida driver's license. If you don't have a driver's license, it's your relinquished license evidence, your Florida vehicle registration, your voter ID card, the address on your tax return. Again, you guys don't have to write this down. I'm going to give this all to you. Where your employer is located. Oh, you must be a US citizen or qualified permanent resident. Where your employer is located is evidence of your residency, but obviously that's a pre-COVID determination, right? There's your declaration of domicile, the address that your kids attend school at, bank statements, and utility bills. Here's a biggie. You can only have one primary home. I probably get a call. I probably get 3 or 4 calls a month. People want to know, or I see in people's homestead filings where they have multiple primary residences. You cannot have multiple primary residences. There are checks for that. People believe that spouses can have separate primaries. They live apart. Florida law states that you can only have one primary residence. And you can't have a primary in another state. Another misconception I was working for a client the other day. We were arranging a hard money loan for them, and they took Florida homestead on their rental house in Florida, and the hard money lender is willing to lend on not primary residences, but they also so that was against the law. So they took homestead on a rental property in Florida, and then they also had a homestead in another state. So they were breaking a couple of laws there, and eventually the Department of Revenue will catch up with them. It's not hard. There are a ton of other homestead exemptions besides those 3 above. Some of the more popular ones: older than 65, unlimited income, widowed, blind, disabled, line of duty, disabled first responder, or surviving spouse of same, disabled vet, or surviving spouse of same. We're gonna, when we do deep dive on homestead, just homestead, we're gonna go into all that stuff. This is portability today, because a lot of people are missing out on portability. How is the market value determined? Everybody messes this up, and I even misstate it, but everybody messes this up. Typically, market value is 85% of the purchase price. Typically. Appraiser assumes average condition, arm's length. Pam, I can remember going through this with you like years and years ago. The rules are still the same, but I remember so many years ago, you and I hammered out these rules. So the appraiser assumes average condition, arm's length transaction. Many realtors tell their clients that the purchase price is the taxable values. They try to do things like suppress the value with personal property sales and assignments of personal property and bills of sales. That is not the litmus test. The litmus test is the comps. And typically the market value is going to be the value. The purchase price is going to be the value, but then they back out 85% of the value. And that's what you're taxed on, because that 15% they assume the buyer spent on closing costs and commissions. So you'll hear a lot of discussions among people, realtors, attorneys, whoever, and they'll say, you know, oh, it's not fair that we're paying taxes on commissions and closing costs, but the tax collector, property appraiser has taken that into consideration, and you're only taxed on roughly 85% of the purchase price or the assessed value, the market value. Values are assessed as of December 31st on the year you apply. So if you bought a property early in 2022 or late in 2022, it doesn't matter. The valuation is going to be the year that you applied. So let's just say you didn't move in until 2023. The valuation is going to be determined by the comps occurring in 2023 if you applied in 2023. So again, the deadline is March 31st of the year where you're living in the property on January 1. Anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to speak out. We got a small group. I'm happy to.
Yeah, no, those timelines are important.
Yep.
Timelines are important.
So what is homestead portability? Again, we'll do a deeper dive on homestead basics, but today is about homestead portability. It's hard to find an exact data number, but it's believed as many as half of the Florida home sales are eligible for portability, but roughly only half get it. And that equals about, ready for this, 5 billion
Jeez.
in missed tax savings. $5 billion people aren't getting that could be getting them.
And that's value that we can provide as agents, right? I mean, that's value that's right there for us to give to our clients, which is incredible.
Can I
So-
ask a question?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
many of half are eligible, but roughly only half get it. Do you mean half of the half?
No, so what I'm trying to explain is if there's 100 transactions that are eligible for portability benefits, only 50 of those people are actually applying and getting them. The other 50 aren't aware and don't apply, or assume that the tax collector will do it on their own. But you want to get your client your share of that 5 bill. So portability came into being in 2008 as part of Save Our Homes constitutional amendment. Values were down. We were going through the midst of the mortgage foreclosure crisis. It just wasn't on people's radar. Portability is a separate filing from Homestead.
Recording in progress.
There we go. Someone's getting some feedback.
So unlike Homestead, there are no filing deadlines. A homeowner can apply at any time, but you can never get back missed portability for prior years. That's self-explanatory. Applies to a move anywhere in the state. And here's something that's counterintuitive. If you are talking to a seller and it's well ahead of the sale, you want to make sure that the property appraiser is appraising the property at the highest value possible, which is contrary to everything you were trying to do prior to the sale, where you were trying to suppress the value. Right before you sell, you want to make sure they're whacking you for the highest possible tax, because that will maximize your portability to the next move. Again, at another show, we'll dive deep on how to maximize the value so you can get maximum portability. And we'll have Adam Rosenfeld on. He's a tax expert, and he'll go into how to do all that stuff. He doesn't even know he's going to be on yet. As I was writing this outline, I realized we got to bring him on because there's so much knowledge he can.
Naitandang pa ni Lisa. Attorney siya lang yung naka...
Is there a way we can mute all?
Oh, sorry.
Nope, all good. So we'll go into how to pump up the value. Best portability explainer I found. This is for Pinellas County. Here's a link to the explainer. And then portability is super easy to apply for. You're going to get the outline, but it's just a couple of it's just a couple of data points, and then you submit it. It's actually on the property appraiser's website. Apportionment, the little known secret. Let's see. So now we're going to go into Save Our Homes. So this is the Pinellas County Save Our Homes explainer. Basically, if you keep this thing at your fingertips This will walk you through almost everything you'll ever encounter in portability. It's super short. There's tons of explainers that are a lot longer. We'll go through it together. As part of Save Our Homes, the value of your homestead can only go up by 3% per year, unless the consumer price index is less than 3% per year. So if you look at this list, here's a list of CPI indexes and the caps. So in certain years where the CPI was low, absolutely not our current year, the cap on the increase was less than 3%. And you can see here's the CPI and here's the cap. So you can be the sophisticated agent that understands all that, and you can revert to this table and explain it to your clients if it ever comes up. But it's 3% of the CPI, whichever is less. If you have a property that's bought and sold, the tax rate for the new property can be double or triple the value of the tax rate for the seller. You know, for your buyer can be triple what that was of the seller. It's important you know why, and we're going to drill down on that in a little bit. So here you have the previous owner's cap was 150. The first year of Save Our Homes, it's 160. The second year, it's 170. So that's being capped. The assessed value is 97. 160 to 162, less the exemptions. So the taxable value for any of these years is going to be $47,000. But now this buyer, so what happened here was this buyer sold, and so the new rate is going to be, this buyer just bought, so the new rate's jumping from 47,000 to 110,000. Now it's capped and it's only going to 112. So this was the old seller's rate. This is the new buyer's rate, but then going forward, it's going to be capped. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In addition to improvements made to the property, value for those improvements will be added to the roll regardless of the cap. For example, if a pool is added to the property, the value can increase no more than the cap rate plus the pool value. They're going to, and they have, the property appraiser has set values on their records for pools and the size of the pool and bedrooms. If you add a bedroom or add a bathroom, all that stuff is kind of plug and play. Adam will come on the show though, and he'll explain to us better how they get those numbers. But if you have clients that are talking about making additions and they're not going to pay any more on their taxes, that's not the way it works. A lot of people believe they can add to their current property and their taxes won't go up. This tax estimator is a link to an estimator that's not Palm Beach County. This is Pinellas. I'm going to go over the estimator for our county in a minute. The cap does not apply to properties that are not homesteaded. We all know that. Rented and multifamily. And if you live in a duplex, you can still homestead. If you live in half of the duplex or a quad or a tri, you can get your homestead for your half. Portability. As a provision of the Save Our Homes Amendment to the Florida Constitution allows homestead property owners to port or transfer the accumulated differences between the assessed value and the just market value. The process of moving this SOH differential from one property to another is referred to as portability. Portability must be applied for and the applications must be submitted. This isn't right. By March 1st of the year being applied for. That's not right. I just noticed that. So portability never goes away. Portability can be applied for anytime. Homestead has to be applied for before March 1st. During the November 3rd, 2020 election, voters approved the portability. We talked about that. We'll go over the portability calculation in a minute, but it's important to remember that if property owners sell a property and then do not file a homestead, they have 2 years, they have 3 years to collect the portability benefit. So for example, my wife and I sold a house and we're living in a temporary home. We have to build and finish our new house and apply for homestead on the new home within 2 years of selling our old home. So if you're renting a property, if you're talking to sellers that are going to sell and rent and then build, I have talked to many clients over the years that rented for 3 or 4 years and didn't get the benefit of the portability. And they were banking on that $500,000 deduction in taxes, which we'll also go over in a minute. The calculation of the portability duration is a little bit tricky. If you sell your homestead property in any month in 2023, the homestead exemption remains with that property until December 31st, 2023, as the qualified homestead exemption was in January 1st, 2023. You now have until January 1st, 2026 to qualify for a new homestead. So it's if you sold at the beginning of the year, it's 3 total years to get into your new homestead. Does that make sense? It's not calculated 3 years from the date you bought or date you sold. It's calculated from the first of the year you applied for until the first of the year 3 years later.
Got it.
So if you sold, homestead property is sold, clock for 1 year reverts to January 1st in the current year, regardless of when the home was sold. So you have the first year, year 2, year 3. Depending on the month of the sale of the year, the time frame to port could be as short as 2 years and 1 day if the property was sold at the year end, right? So if you sold your property at the end of the first year, you're not going to have your first full 3 years to get your new portability property. What is the maximum amount that can be ported? We're going to go over that in a minute. I'll show you a couple examples. 500,000. How is the portability amount impacted by upsizing or downsizing? Just market value. If you're upsizing, the just market value on the new homestead is greater or equal to than the previous home's just market value. The entire homestead will be ported up to 500,000. If you're downsizing, it's going to be a portion of the percentage. So you'll never completely eliminate your taxes. For example, moving from a property with a just market value of 300 down to a property at 180 would result in a $60,000, 60% reduction of the Save Our Homes benefit. So it's simple math. When they're downsizing, they don't get a 1-for-1 dollar credit. If anybody doesn't understand anything I said, ask.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's an interesting part. So if they're, because I have a lot of, elderly
Yeah.
clients, right, that are selling their home and going to a condo, so they get a percentage of that. Because I have one right now that would have the 500,000, and they're going into a smaller condo. So that's good to know.
When is the deadline to apply for portability? Must be submitted by March 1st, 31. I will show you guys the statute on that later, why that's not the case. That's the homestead deadline. Portability can be filed for. Actually, I take that back. There is no deadline on portability, but if you want to take portability for that year, you have to apply before March 31st of that year. So if you apply for portability on March 2nd of that year, you won't get it as a tax benefit until the following year. If you apply for it before March 31st of that year, you will get it as a tax saving for that year. Does that make sense? I explained it in a confusing way before because unlike homestead, it never goes away. But you only get the benefit if you apply in that year, if you apply for it before March 31st of that year. Does the tax estimator on your website take into accountability portability? Yes. And we'll go through a couple examples in a minute. I just want to explain to you guys why. Alex, would you do me a huge favor and just tell Danny that I am in a title talk discussion with a bunch of realtors and I can't participate in the demo. Here is an example of here's an example of statements that realtors and I hear people talk about that isn't accurate. They say, oh, the values are going down, your taxes are going to go down. That's not the way it works. If your market value is over your appraised value, so here's the market value in an increasing market. Here's the assessed value. This is what you're being taxed at. So the market value at the top is a little bit less than 150 grand. The assessed value is just a little bit over $100,000. And while the market value is increasing, the assessed value is increasing. And what I'll hear people say is, well, values are going down, you're going to pay less taxes. Wrong. Here's where values are declining. right? And this isn't that much of a stretch. The person's owned their home for a few years, and this is their assessed value. It's probably a Century Village condo a number of years ago, but that's another story. Here's now the value is going down, but the assessed value is still going up. So you don't want to be in a position of giving this information. And then here, the assessed value has been falling long enough, and I saw this in my own personal property in 2013, 14, finally the taxable value started falling. And then as soon as the market values rise, obviously the assessed values will follow.
That only 3%. So you did capture.
Yep, you took
Yep.
advantage of that drop, and then the increase can only be more than 3% after the drop. Yeah,
Mhm.
good point, Ryan. Will I lose my homestead if I add someone to title? We can go through all this stuff. Basically, we'll do it at a deeper dive on homestead, but basically, if you add somebody to title, except for under rare circumstances, you're gonna lose your homestead cap. You won't lose your homestead exemption, the $50,000, but you're gonna lose the cap, so the taxes will reset. I hear people tell me all the time, they have kids and they don't have a huge estate, or they don't have a lot of assets in their estate, and they could have a very expensive home or an inexpensive home, it doesn't matter. A life estate deed is the best way to leave your property to your kids without titling your kids on today, and we'll talk about that in the future. But just a warning sign when you hear people talking about adding their kids to title after the sale, not the best move. Or adding kids to title during the course of their ownership, it can reset homestead. And a life estate deed is the best one to use, the best tool to use, so that the property transfers to the kids as a function of law, and you don't have to go through the probate process. I want to show, we're at 26 minutes. I want to show you guys some portability examples.
Yeah, this is great.
So here is a property. This is all public record. We can talk about names. Anybody can discover this stuff, as I'm sure you guys are aware. Here's a property that's been owned for a while. 2020, they bought it for $815,000. Before that, it sold for $180,000 back in 1990. Couple of things you can pick up real quickly looking at this. No one's filed it for homestead on it recently. And somebody filed homestead on it years ago. And then you can even look further back and you can see 10 years prior, somebody was taking the homestead exemption. So if you walk into a listing appointment and you want to have added dialogue with your seller to let them know that you know what you're doing, you can take a quick glance at this and you have a real quick homestead snapshot, and you'll know whether your client has portability or not. So if this person were selling, they'd have no portability. When this person sold, you would have portability. Here is the improvement value of this property. They're only putting the sticks and bricks at $84,000. They're putting the land at $969,000. So the total market value, the top line on that curve we were looking at a minute ago, was $1 million. The assessed value on that property is $860,000. $859,000 is the assessed value because of that lower curve we talked about, where we saw it ticking up 3% per year, right? They got into the property at $179,000. I'm sorry, we should be looking at this one here. They got in the property at $179,000. They put the improvement value. So we're not looking at the one where they transferred ownership. We're looking at the seller's side before they transferred ownership. So they got into the property at $181,000. I'm sorry. They got into the property a million years ago at $180,000. And in 2020, when that homesteaded owner was still on the property, they said the sticks and bricks were worth 180 and the dirt was worth 540 and 220 in year 2020. When they sold the property, they were only paying $5,000 in taxes. because they said that the assessed value, that lower line on the curve, only increased 3% per year. Then we also took off the $50,000 deduction, so they're only paying taxes on $209,000 at a 2% millage rate. That was $5,000. We're going to look at the portability this person would realize if they were taking Homestead there, and that looks like this. You go up the page a little bit to the portability calculator. You have the market value today is $1 million, which we saw. That's this number right here. That's the market value. You have the assessed value, 859,000. That's this value right here. And now you see the differential. That's the portability benefit they can take to their next property. So if you assume, this is the number that you put in yourself, if you assume they're going to go buy a $1 million property, this is the portability, this is what they'd be paying taxes on, $815,000. Then you take off the 50, their total taxable value, their tax bill is going to go down relative to everybody else in the block that doesn't have homestead, and they're only going to pay taxes on $765,000.
Yeah, so you saved them like 10 grand.
Yep.
Right.
So again, here's the market value right from the property appraiser's
6 grand.
record.
Yeah.
Here's the assessed value right from the property appraiser's record. That's the portability differential. That's the piece they can take to any property they buy to reduce taxes, provided they're buying a more expensive home. Here's the purchase price of their new home, $1 million. And here's what they're going to pay taxes on, $765,000. Now, if we look at a property with a huge pent up portability opportunity, they bought this property for $145,000 in August of 1981, right? This is an example that I found that's a standout, but it brings to light an issue I want to show you guys. So here, they're still in the house. They're still taking the homestead. We don't have to look back a few years to calculate the homestead benefit. They're still in the house. They're still taking the homestead benefit. You can go back 10 years. You can see they've taken the homestead benefit every of the 10 years prior, but we're only looking at 5. They're saying the improvement value, the sticks and bricks of this property is only $80,000. Now I know this house myself, and it would probably be valued today at about 2.5 million, but the sticks and bricks, the improvements are only 80 grand. The land they're putting at $1 million. So the total market value is $1 million and change. That's the top line on that curve we looked at earlier. The assessed value, however, has been compressed by 3% per year, or the CPI, whichever is less, since 1981. So the taxable value is only 248 grand. So these guys are paying taxes of $5,500 on a property that's worth about 2.5 million. That buyer is going to be like, whoa, when they move in. But the seller, when they go to their new property, here's that market value that we looked at. Here's the assessed value. That was the capped value from the purchase price. There is the total portability benefit to take to their new property. So now they're going to go buy a property for $200,000 or for $2 million. And they're only going to pay taxes on $1,450,000. Why? Although they had a $760,000 benefit available to them, it was capped by that $500,000 number we talked about. So they're buying for $2 million. They get the $500,000 benefit because it was capped. You take another 50 grand off, they're going to be paying taxes on $1,450,000. So you just saved them $10,000 on their tax bill. They're happy, you're happy, you look like a hero, and because you explained it to them, and they're maybe willing to spend a little more than they would have otherwise.
Mhm. Let's see, Jim, what happens if they're buying, let's say, a smaller, like a condo? Does that factor in? Let's say they bought a condo for 500 grand.
Do you have an address that we could come up? Oh, so, okay, yeah, we're just
No,
gonna
I'm
use.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
let's say they're not upping
Yeah.
their size of their home. Let's say they're downsizing. Because that's the situation I'm in right now. And I want to see if it's factoring in that 60%. Okay.
Bam, they're
Wow.
only gonna pay taxes on $88,000.
And then it's locked in then at that point too, at 3% a year. So I mean, it just, if someone's,
Good point. Yeah.
yeah, well, I'm just saying, if they're elderly on a fixed income, they can really, figure out exactly what their costs are going to be.
I love this stuff. Um, does anybody have any questions on portability? Again, looking at the property appraiser's record before you walk into any listing appointment is hugely valuable. I can't stress enough.
Mhm.
Getting a title advance, knowing what's going on with title. Here you've got a property. I'm sorry, Ryan, I just want to mention something. Here you've got a property that's held in a trust. So the first thing you're going to do when you're in that listing appointment is you're going to say, hey, I see your property's held in a trust. At some point during the title process, we're going to need to see a copy of the trust or the relevant pages. You want to set up all those expectations so you don't get deep into the transaction and they're saying, oh, I didn't know we had to provide a copy of the trust. You have a title advance, you know what mortgages are on the property, you know who's gonna, when you're having that conversation at the listing appointment, you're gonna ask them, okay, who's gonna sign for the trust? Oh, I am, of course. Well, chances are it's gonna be Aileen Rowe, but you actually do need to read copies of the trust. The title agent will do that for you to make sure that Aileen is the one who can in fact sign for the trust.
Mhm. Let me ask you this question. We have a question here from Karen. She asked, can you do portability to other states, or is it just Florida?
Nope, just Florida, anywhere in Florida. And no portability can be brought, even if your state, your not Florida state has portability. No portability can be brought from other states into Florida.
All right, good question.
Any others? Negative?
This is good, Jim. You cover some
Either
great
Yeah,
topics.
I do have. Just to confirm, so after the new purchase and applying the portability, down the road, they're gonna pay taxes
say that
on
again.
a
Federico?
2%. Say it again?
Say that one more time.
In the new home, after
Yep.
the portability, they're gonna pay taxes on that value, 88,000.
Yep.
And it's gonna increase 3% over year.
Yep. So that example that we came up with here, where they were going to go buy a $500,000 house. Let's see, why did that turn off? 500,000. Now, their new tax bill is going to be based on $88,000. So their millage rate is going to be 2% of $88,000. And so moving forward, it's going to go up 3% per year based on the 88,000.
Yep.
Wow. But yeah, I
I
see
mean,
why you love this benefit. It's amazing.
That's so powerful, especially if you have people that are downsizing, is what I really see the value at. And this now, Jim, I got a quick question here. What can the sellers do? Let's say we use this elderly couple, for example, they homestead it, they have a locked-in rate, but even their assessed value hasn't been crazy. Is there, you had mentioned earlier, there is a process to try and increase that assessed value before they sell.
Yep.
Obviously not the taxable value. Who do they speak to? What would you recommend for that?
There's a gentleman that we work with, ARE Tax Solutions, Adam Rosenfeld. We'll bring Adam on. For now, I'll put his link in the outline when I send it around. Adam does tax appeals. He can advise on pumping up value for the benefit of portability when you sell. That's all he does for a living, is do those calculations, make those things happen, get those
Yeah.
reductions.
Because
Yep.
that would be a great, quiver, arrow in your quiver would do, when you're going on a listing point where you're talking to a seller that is downsizing, say, hey, there's something we can do here. Obviously, we're going to have a sales price that's higher, but that isn't your assessed value here when you do the portability. What can we do now to get that increase that market value?
Right. So if the value that they're using is deflated, if the market value that they're using, the assessed value rather, is deflated. I'm sorry, if the market that they're using is deflated before you sell, contrary to everything you've told your seller prior to the point they're selling, now is the time to pump up the market value of your house to maximize your portability. Does that make sense? It seems counterintuitive, but that's the goal.
Yeah.
Jim?
I'm sure. Go ahead.
If, let's say a couple owns a home in their personal names,
Yep.
and then they want to put it into a trust.
Yep.
Is that a change on the deed that would reset, or it's the same people, but they're putting it, from their individual names into a trust for asset protection reasons?
Yep. So the question is, if you transfer property from your title to you personally and then title it into a trust, does that reset Save Our Homes? The answer is generally no. There are a bunch of elements that you have to check off the boxes that the trust must meet. And we'll go over those when we talk about Homestead in general, but transferring into a trust, if you have an attorney do it who knows what they're doing, which most do, will not trigger. But I will tell you, will not trigger the reset of taxes. But I will tell you, I have seen many people transfer into a trust, because I get the calls, that did trigger a reset because the elements of the trust were not met. So it's hugely important that you use an attorney who knows what they're doing. And the other thing that always resets Save Our Homes is transferring into an LLC. So I get calls from people that said, my realtor told me I could put it in an LLC for asset protection or a business reason or this or that, and I lost my homestead. What do I do? You can never have Florida property titled to an entity that is not a natural person, and a trust is considered a natural person that gets the benefits of homestead. That's a basic.
It's good. We got a question from Federico. Can a seller apply for a homestead backwards? They sold the home already?
No,
No. Yeah.
no. You have to give me an example of what you're talking about. Oh, no. Can you apply for homestead on a property you no longer own? No. No. And I had a client downtown that sold a property, moved into a condo, rented for a couple years while they were building their new house, and the realtor told them that the homestead never goes away, you get it forever. And so they were in the condo for 3 or 4 years, built their new house, moved into their house, and their taxes reset, and it was millions of dollars. And now they're suing the realtor because the realtor sent them emails that said, no, you take your homestead and you build as long as you want. And it's unfortunate, but it does happen. And so, you always want to refer your clients to some kind of authority where they can do the research on their own. You tell them a little bit about the law, but you don't tell them this is what the law is. In this particular situation, the realtor said, here's the law. And unfortunately, the realtor had done tons of transactions for this person over time. And besides being in a lawsuit, it was a huge loss of business. I don't think the lawsuit will stick. Regardless, it's just a pain in the butt to have to defend one of those things. Any other questions? Nope.
No, that's great, Jim.
All right. Without further ado, Ryan, go ahead and drop your value proposition on these guys, because we love real trade. I love real trade.
Thanks, Jim. No, it's great. What a great topic. I mean, I have this, like I said, for my own clients, that I'm going to be giving them this information and make sure that they get the portability, because they're one of those situations where they are downsizing. So we're excited, bringing value to you guys as an agent. I'm an agent myself, been doing it for 20 years. I first off want to say I love Jim and New Path Title. They do all my closings, and I take big advantage of Title Advance. That's something that has actually saved me on a couple deals where some things popped up on title that I was able to handle before we got to a contract and weren't scrambling at the last minute. Also, love Title Leap. It's like a contraction coordinator. Use that on all my transactions. It's awesome. But quick value prop for Real Trade. You guys, if you're not using Real Trade, get on there. It's free for agents. Okay. You create a profile, you own all your own listings, and we have thousands of buyers or sellers on there. They click one of your listings. Once you register, you're the point of contact. They can actually message you through the app, call you on your phone or your email. And then we have a whole social part of the aspect where you can actually help find properties that are off market for your clients, sell properties quicker through the social aspect. So I tell everybody it's a marketplace similar to Zillow, but free for agents, and then mixed with LinkedIn, but only for real estate. And we have awesome service providers on there. Jim's one of them. We have lenders, great lender actually on the call. Jeff Stewart's on there. He's a great lender that you can connect with, and other service providers, contractors.
I'm going to bring you a handyman who wants to be on Real Trade, and we're going to do an insurance topic in the future, and the insurance guy wants to be on Real Trade. So insurance is a hot topic that's coming up. We'll even have a handyman, and we'll have a general contractor on the show to talk about permitted and unpermitted work and distinctions and those things. My name is Jim Brown. I'm a practicing Florida real estate attorney. I've done it for too many years now to mention. I give 24/7 attorney support. If anybody wants to text me, you can go to newpathtitle.com and click on 24/7 attorney support. We'll answer all your questions, get you in and out of deals with least pain possible. Title advance, go to titleadvance.io. If you're going on a listing appointment, grab a title advance. It'll make you look like the most distinguished agent. You'll get the listing. New Path Title, we've been doing it for a million years. There's not much we've never seen. And the law firm can be plugged in anytime for evictions, lien mitigations, anything we need to get the deal closed. We do hard money loans. Lenders pop out at the last minute. You need to plug something in and it's not a homestead. We can do hard money loans. And we have cryptocurrency closing capacity. Say that 3 times fast. And at some point soon, we're going to be blockchaining and NFTing title. But we do all the latest exotic boutique stuff, and we're happy to help realtors 24/7. Even if I'm not your closing agent, please text me, tell me what's going on with your deal. We'll figure out what the resolution is. I got one the other day. Title agent at the last minute said they couldn't close. There was a pool that had been notice of commencement that was after the that had to be terminated and then refiled. We do them all the time. You know, they go out and they start doing work before they get their refi for the work. We can take care of those transactions, easy stuff. So if you need something weird done, we can do it for you. If you need advice on a weird deal, even if I'm not the title agent, I can get it to you. So use us. We're happy to help.
Awesome,
And
Jim.
every seller, I'm seeing this more and more, every seller knows a bunch of people who are on the fence about selling. If you use Real Trade and you represent buyers that are looking for a property, now you go on their social media feed, you tell the world what your, how many agents do you have now, Ryan? 1,400?
We're closing in on 1,500 now, Jim.
1,500 agents. So if you have a buyer that's looking for something and it's not listed, you go on Real Trade, throw it in the social feed. Now you'll get sellers that know people with properties that are afraid to list or for whatever reason reluctant to list. Now you can take a real buyer and show it to your seller and say, here we go. And you can make that sale happen on unlisted property. So it's a great tool. All right,
Awesome.
that's it. That's all I got, you guys. We are at 48 minutes. I ran a little long. I hope you got some value out of it. And I got a little confusing in some of this stuff because it's a little bit technical with the dates and whatnot and the determination on portability and things like that. But if you go back and look at the outline, I'll send you the outline. It'll all make sense. And more importantly, if you have an issue and you keep those things on your phone, you can just click on it. Then you can just come up with the answer real quick. All right. Have a
Thanks,
great
Jim.
day. Sell a ton of property.
All right, guys. Good luck.
Thank you.